Hello everybody, here we are today checking in on Kaapo Kakao and seeing how he's been doing since being traded over to the Seattle Kraken about 2 months ago. But before we get started with that, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So I gotta say it feels good to be back after nearly a week off. I had Valentine's Day, of course, and my wedding anniversary. And I also was sick in that time, if you couldn't tell. And I know just before I left, my voice kind of was dealing with a lot of stuff. So it was kind of a foreshadowing of things to come. Anyway, we're going to be talking about Kaapo Kakao in this video. And today, this is really interesting because not that long ago, again, December 19th or a little bit before that, you saw the Kaapo Kakao trade as the Rangers kind of in an interesting era, as Kaapo was their former second overall pick and really did bring a lot of excitement for a short bit to New York. Even though things didn't really work out the way they were hoping, there weren't really a lot of highs, there were a lot of lows, and there was a lot of frustration in that time. And while that era is clearly over, I do think that there is a new, renewed sense of excitement for Kaapo's career. Maybe not so much for New York fans, but he is on the opposite side of the country, and he is getting a fresh start as a guy that just recently turned 24 years old. And we kind of get to take a look at how things are going for him right now, and I'd say that things are going better in some ways. In fact, he's already got more points with the Kraken than he had with the Rangers at this stage of the season. And looking at this, he has 17 points in 24 games for Seattle, whereas before he had 14 points in 30 games for New York. And at this stage, he'd actually be on pace to have a career year for the Kraken and a career year for himself. His previous high for points would have been 40, and at this pace, he would be going on about 58 points. So an 18-point improvement for a career high in points is never something that really is too discouraging in that regard, especially for a guy that is younger and has had to deal with a lot of things that have not gone his way for his career. And there are other signs that are good for him too. He's getting more minutes than he's ever got before. He's getting about 17.5 minutes per night and is getting more power play time. This is something where I actually want him to be more aggressive. We talked about that before for Kaapo, as he's never really been somebody that takes as many shots as maybe you would like to see for a guy that is a second overall pick. And on the man advantage, I think this is especially where I want him to get aggressive. I remember distinctively doing a video talking about that, where he just needs to be more aggressive, especially on the man advantage. And in this case, it kind of holds up yet again. In his time with Seattle, he has 2 power play points in 24 games played. And looking at this, I think that yes, you realize that there are going to be other guys for Seattle that are probably going to go out there and compete and be more of the expected goal scorer, if you will. But at the same time, too, they have just 10 goals on the man advantage in their past 24 games. They rank 25th in the league in terms of power play percentage for the course of the year. I don't think there's anything wrong with Kakao going out there and saying that he wants to kind of take charge, or at least be a big front runner in this category. At this stage of the year for Seattle, they're probably not going out there and making the playoffs. Again, this is not like he would just be taking on a unit that is, one of the best in the league and then just singing them to the bottom. They already are kind of near the bottom of the league in that regard anyway. So with there being a relatively short amount of time, especially coming back from the break, I really am hoping that maybe he does try to go out there and be the guy that leads them in points at least, maybe not goals, but try to go out there and be more aggressive in general, especially something like this on the power play, where it is easier to go out there and rack up points, and again, kind of attribute to what's been a good run in that regard in terms of getting points and getting close to about an average of a point per game, which is something that did not seem possible for the course of his career so far. Now, looking at even strength, I think this is something that is a little bit disappointing compared to what you're hoping for. I think one of the things we've talked about before for Kaapo Kakao is the fact that he is a guy that has had good defensive numbers before. And I know that year that he had like 40 points, we're talking about, if he was a 40 to 50 point guy that was giving you good defensive numbers, that this would really be not the end-all be-all for a New York team that is in the spot to compete for a Stanley Cup. But at this stage of where we're at right now, the numbers are a little bit below 50% for even strength since joining Seattle. But the good thing is, in that regard, nobody is really just on a tear at even strength for the Kraken. They don't have these guys that are just having monster years in a lot of categories. In fact, there are some pretty gruesome numbers over the past 24 games since he's gone out there and joined the team. And I think really one of the oddities, or not really oddities, one of the things that sticks out pretty apparent in terms of even strength numbers for Kaapo is just the high danger goals for compared to against. He has got 1 hiding your goal for compared to 9 against in this category. And I don't think we've ever really viewed Kaapo as somebody that is an extremely dangerous player, at least at the NHL level. But this is something where you would like to see it get a little bit closer to 50-50. But I think that, again, with it being close-ish to 50-50, it's not the end-all be-all. And then when you realize that he is first on the team for even strength points since his arrival at 15, it's not bad. Now he's actually tied for the top spot, but still, again, joining a team that isn't really on pace to have somebody that cracks 70 points, maybe even not even 65, and isn't going to have probably anybody crack 30 goals for the year. Kind of just goes to show you where the Kraken are at the moment, and kind of, again, brings to light how things are different on this side compared to New York, where that could be a good thing for Kaapo. So he joins a New York team that is really good and is in a spot to compete for the Stanley Cup, goes to the Eastern Conference Final on 2 occasions. And at times, unfortunately, I think can kind of be seen as an anchor holding this team back from really going out there and competing truly and winning a championship. In a way, kind of unfairly, but I think at a certain point too, you know, you are an experienced NHL guy that was taken nearly first overall. I think that it's just very hard being in that kind of scene where you're an original 6 franchise, you know, one of the biggest media platforms in the league, probably up there with, again, Toronto, and have a championship drought that is going on 30 plus years. It's just hard in general. Actually, it is, you know, again, over 30 plus years. And you're not going to be in a good spot to get kind of a lot of slack from the fans. Whereas you go over to Seattle, young fan base, and I think their appreciation for hockey is a little bit different. You know, this is an organization that is going to probably miss the playoffs yet again and only have made it one time in this will be their 4th season. So they're okay, and they're really focused more on developing those younger forwards. You know, they've got guys like Matty Beniers, they've got guys like Shane Wright, and those are just a couple of the examples of these players that were taken high in the draft. And I think that's kind of one of the good things for him too, is some of these players like Beniers and Wright haven't developed maybe as quickly as you would have wanted. And Seattle at times I think has really done a good job, or at least they have tried to show some patience, especially with Wright when things didn't work out perfectly. And I think Wright has done a good job too of, you know, taking a step back and taking a breath and not freaking out when things didn't go his way. So if Kaapo can be part of Seattle's plans in terms of these younger guys that take a little bit longer to develop, and they actually do end up developing, that's good, especially considering the fact that he's played with a guy like Matty Beniers. But I think on the flip side too, you kind of get into a sense where you're a little bit worried if a lot of these guys don't pan out. And then you can say, look at, you know, Beniers, or look at Wright, look at Kaapo Kakao. You would have 3 examples of guys taken high in the draft where things didn't really work out for them. But it's not the end-all be-all for me, especially for this, because he is an RFA that they're going to be able to retain for a cheap amount. And I do apologize again, guys, because I was gone for like a week. My voice was bad before, and it seems to be in a worse spot right now. The weather is just all over the place, a lot of snow. Again, it's like hovering right around 0, so that's unfortunate. But back to Kaapo Kakao. He is in a better spot right now, I think, than he's been in a point of his career. He's getting more opportunities on a team that just isn't in a do-or-die situation to go out there and win the most important trophy in sports. I mean, that's just my opinion as a NHL fan first over anything else. But I think that there are a lot of things that could go his way again in the next couple of years and see a bit of a career revival. Is he ever going to be looked at as worthy of being of the 2nd overall pick? Probably not in that traditional sense, although you have to remember too, some draft class, they have a lot of guys that probably would be worth taking, you know, 2nd overall in hindsight, whereas other draft classes, they don't look as dominant as before. So it just kind of depends, I think, more on an individual level, and if Kaapo is seen as somebody that kind of holds things steady at even strength, and then ends up being maybe like a 70-point guy for Seattle as they turn things around and is more of a kind of not necessarily depth player, but just a key player and trying to get things going, but not a superstar. I don't see that thing being very bad. And I think that when it all comes down to it, the future may not necessarily be in Seattle, but this could actually be a really good avenue for him. And I'm hoping that things kind of work in a two-way path for him in Seattle. But anyway, what are your thoughts after 24 games of Kaapo Kakao in Seattle? 17 points. The team is 9-13-2 over the time, which isn't great. But again, it's not like they're on the pace to the playoffs beforehand anyway. So let me know your opinion down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And Eagle of Hockey, all right.
Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.